I'm gonna show you how you can get rid of your chronic physical pain for good. So I want you to ask yourself, if this video was the last thing standing between you and a lifetime of being pain-free, would it be worth paying attention to? At the end of last year, December of 2022, I set the intention that I was gonna become pain-free in 2023. And not just because it sounded good, right? I have struggled with chronic pain for my entire life. Before I filmed this, I was trying to come up with some very specific examples of what happened to me when I was younger that caused me to experience the various pains in my body. But there have been so many various experiences that have led me to the pain that I currently experience, or the pain that I did experience up until I discovered this particular process that I'm gonna show you. And so first and foremost, let's talk about the pain that I do and did struggle with, because frankly it's so generic, so similar to what many people with chronic pain struggle with. And so I hope by giving you an idea of my symptoms, you can figure out if this does or does not relate to you, and really upfront give you the information that you need to rationalize whether this is actually going to be worth your time to watch. I know chronic pain is one of those things that's so present in our lives, and you've probably already spent a huge amount of time and energy trying to tackle this for yourself, and it can absolutely suck to be drugged down this rabbit hole of building up a huge amount of hope for yourself, thinking, hey, this method might actually work for me, only to put in even more time, even more energy, all for another massive letdown. And I really hope that that's not what this video is for you. I want you to understand what I struggled with and then exactly what I've done to overcome that struggle, to now here we are only 7 months into the strongest intention that I've ever set for relieving my chronic pain. And both because of what I now understand and the results that I've gotten, my life is completely transformed. Honestly, I don't think there's anything that has strained my experience more as a human than physical chronic pain. And so my hope is that this video gives you some relief. So without further ado, let's jump in. Okay, so for me, everything began in high school. I entered high school with the commitment to become a good wrestler. Now that did not happen at all. I was terrible at wrestling. But even with a record chock full of losses, I still managed to accrue plenty of the injuries from the sport. I was also getting big into weightlifting at the time, and I think a lack of understanding the real importance of good technique, right? That just massive amount of impact without the real proper form behind it. It didn't lead to a happy time for my legs or my back or my shoulder. One other important factor to mention, I was also exploring parkour at the time, and parkour, for those of you that are not aware, is kind of like the art of jumping from building to building or climbing up walls, but there's a lot of jumping off said buildings and off said walls. Yes, rolling is important, but that does not mean that your legs are not going to experience any kind of impact even with proper rolls. So that's sort of the sum of the physical activity that I was doing at this point, and I just wanted to give you that background so you could have some idea of where these injuries came from. What were the specific injuries? So I had 2 massive impacts to my knees. Essentially, I tried to grab onto a wall, but instead of bringing my feet up to hit that wall, right, absorbing the impact, my body just slapped against the wall like a rag doll. My knees took all of that impact, and I was diagnosed with tendonitis in both knees because of that impact. I also suffered head trauma from a wrestling match. I basically had a person dive like a dolphin at me with their head, and their head crashed into my head, and it left me with a concussion as well as some nerve damage in my neck. Now, there were various other injuries that happened from weightlifting specifically. I bulged a disc in my lower back from an improper squat. That led me to pain in my neck, pain in my shoulders, pain in my lower back, pain running through my legs in the form of what you might know as sciatica. The nutshell is that all of these injuries left me in significant pain for a very long period of time, which I know plenty of you are probably watching this thinking, man, I've had my chronic pain for 30, 40 years. What's this guy talking about 14 years being a long time? Listen, it's not a competition, and I acknowledge that is a long time to suffer. And so I hope that some of the principles I'm going to talk about as far as how I found relief resonate with you just that much more. See, the last 7 months is not the full duration of time that I've tried to tackle this pain. I've been trying since day one. I've used conventional physical therapy, a lot of yoga, trying to do exercises focusing on form as much as possible while using extremely low weight, really trying to feel into those movements in a flow-based way, like, you know, really feeling out what that movement feels like, trying to like consciously release from the pain in the moment. And to a degree, everything that I tried has worked a little bit. When I've been able to commit myself to consistency, there's been a larger degree of relief, but nothing really stuck, right? Nothing was giving me that massive life transformation based pain relief that I was really looking for. And I know for a lot of you watching this right now, you've probably struggled with consistency to a degree simply because seeing some amount of relief when you first practice a particular method of therapy has to happen for you to really want to stay consistent. It has to happen for you to trust the process. Even after multiple months of daily consistency with a lot of these processes, I was not seeing that relief. And it was pretty ego crushing, right? Especially seeing a lot of my peers still participating in these same activities, still progressing, essentially unburdened by any kind of physical pain themselves. It made me feel like I was particularly unworthy for these kinds of sports. Now, everything changed for me back in November of 2022 when I discovered a book called Healing Your Back Pain by a guy named Dr. John Sarno. This was recommended to me by somebody that I met at a conference in DC. Now, Now, I have a massive amount of respect for this particular individual, nothing having to do with physical fitness at all, just their work in the activism space. And so it's like somebody that you highly respect and think is way further along in life than you, recommend something to you, even if it's not in alignment with what you identify as their particular set of mastery. You respect the person, so you're still gonna go give it a try. And so that's what I did. I picked up Healing Your Back Pain and I read it in one sitting. Now, almost 8 months later, I say without a shadow of a doubt that the principles of that book have changed my life. And it really boils down to one particular concept. In Healing Your Back Pain, Dr. Sarno lays out what he calls his 12 daily reminders. And the first of these daily reminders is gonna set the premise for the rest of what I'm gonna talk about, really. And that reminder is that the pain is purely psychological, not physical. The pain that I experienced from my injuries came and went and came and went. It would be gone for months at a time, and then seemingly randomly it would flare up. Sometimes this would have to do with how strenuous the exercise that I was doing was. Sometimes it was completely unexplainable to me until I read this book and understood that really psychology is the root of all of our physical pain. Due to one concept, emotionally induced tension. We as individuals hold trauma in our bodies. A lot of the times our brain processes trauma by just shrugging it off. And so we transfer those feelings into physical tension. Now, this is something that I had somewhat of an understanding of before in regards to trauma and generally how people process trauma. And I had been practicing this idea of releasing from emotional tension and challenge simply by breathing, right? Going into my physical body and trying to release tension from inside. And so it's ironic, right? I'd already been practicing this. But what I didn't understand was that by simply switching the way that I processed my pain, simply switching the way that I thought about it, I was essentially allowing myself to experience relief. Now, rather than having this narrative that there was something that I was missing, right? Some kind of practice that I was not doing enough of. Instead, I acknowledged my pain as being brought on by my mental state. Now, I highly recommend that you read the book. I highly recommend that you get Dr. Sarno's feedback and understand why he's really presenting the information the way that he's presenting. But something that I want to impart on you that I wish had been imparted on me in the book and really, been truly emphasized in the book is that you almost have to go to war with your own mind. If you have limiting beliefs and you want to reprogram those limiting beliefs, if you believe that, hey, I am a person that just is physically incapable. Because of my pain, there are things that I simply cannot do, and this is part of who I am. This is how I identify now. Reading a book one time is not going to fix that. That's a set of beliefs that you have to rewrite multiple times, over and over again, frankly on a daily basis. And only after constantly convincing yourself and allowing this to be a possibility, right? Allowing it to be a possibility that this is a psychologically induced state. Only then are you going to start to experience those physical breakthroughs, which quite literally feel like taking a padlock off of certain parts of your body. But it takes work. We as humans are incredibly stubborn sometimes. And so it was once I went beyond simply reading these statements, when I went beyond trying to believe this, right? Wanting to believe this, to consistently, forcefully reminding myself every single day, multiple times a day, this is a psychologically induced state. I need to accept that this pain is completely normal and accept that this pain is something I can easily recover from once I release from the need to identify with it. That's it, right? That's the method. It's that simple. But 90% of the people watching this video are not going to implement that simple practice of consistently, constantly reinforcing that set of beliefs. Why? Because we as humans, not only are we stubborn, but we're also objective to a fault. We need things to be an actionable physical strategy. We're desperate to stretch, right? We're desperate to do PT exercises. It tends to be way easier to get yourself to put in physical reps than it is to get yourself to put in mental and emotional reps. Dr. Sarno in the book talks about the human body's incredible potential for healing itself. And this actually goes in direct alignment with many contemporary physical therapy practices. This one method, I don't know how to pronounce it, is almost entirely built around the concept of fixing your posture before you fix anything else. And a huge part of the reason is because when posture is off, we tend to overcompensate in other areas. The Sarno method takes it one step further. It's not just your posture that's off alignment. Yes, when you experience physical pain, your body is going to move to compensate for that pain, ultimately causing you pain in other areas. And so correcting that posturing, right, correcting that overcompensation is incredibly important. But rather than trying to have these one-off battles with various posture problems and very specific muscle corrections, we're starting with the idea that there's something wrong with you in the first place, because there isn't. If you were to release from this tension as a whole, you wouldn't have to deal with any of these issues in the first place. And so what do we have to do to get ourselves into that place where we are consistently reminding ourselves that we exist in one of the most powerful biological systems ever? Your body alone can fight off incredibly powerful diseases. You can heal massive laceration. And you really think that you can't naturally heal your shoulder pain, heal your neck pain? You really believe that you wouldn't experience relief if you just broke out of the daily habit patterns that brought you here in the first place? Now, if you've been on this journey for a while, you've probably started monitoring your posture. You've probably started monitoring the way that it feels for your body to sit and type in that same position all day, every day. And maybe you started actively shifting that posture. Maybe you started incorporating some of these physical therapy movements that do provide relief. This is incredibly important and you are on the right path. But beyond believing how much pain relief you're going to experience simply by going through this psychological shift, I want you to put this stuff into practice and start to see that relief for yourself right now. So here's your action step, right? There are 2 to 3 daily activities that you already know about that you're either doing or you could be doing more consistently. Right now, I want you to open your calendar, whether that's a Google Calendar, Outlook, something like that. Maybe you still use a physical calendar. And I want you to design a morning and an evening routine that incorporates those activities. Again, just 2 or 3. It can be more if you feel like you want to add more, but we really want to make sure that we're able to be consistent with this rather than just overwhelming ourselves with a ton of different habits based on some principle that we're trying to aspire to. And right now, that's going to come from relieving yourself of that physical chronic pain. When you're doing these practices, I want you to try to become as present as possible. And as you're doing your thing, whether it's yoga or stretching or foam rolling or whatever it is, I want you to consciously acknowledge that this is something that is being brought about by my subconscious mind. More and more each day, you're going to start to notice that you can consciously release from that pain. It is going to become super obvious how this is a muscular tension that you are subconsciously holding on to. And the way that you're going to allow that tension to release more and more is by consciously acknowledging that it is brought about by you. Some experience, right, maybe multiple experiences, force you to hold on to that tension. It is your body's way of acknowledging that something wrong happened to you. It is trying to bring you some mental respite by holding onto that physical tension as a sort of memento, as a sort of reminder of that trauma. And so as you start to dig into that tension, right, trying to consciously release from that tension, you may experience old memories, old emotion. Do not resist this, right? Allow it to come up. Be present with it. Be conscious with it. Give it space. And as you acknowledge it, and really on a spiritual level, as you appreciate it, you will notice that this pain is something that you can release from more and more every single day. Now, this is a concept that I've gone a little bit more in depth with other videos. Very specifically, there's a process called letting go that was invented by a psychotherapist called Dr. David Hawkins. I made a video on that a while ago. I'll link it below, but really that practice combined with your daily consistent practice of reminding yourself, hey, this is psychologically induced, right? You are going to experience a huge amount of relief, but you have to be consistent. And so the action steps from this video are, again, design that morning and evening routine with just a few practices. We don't want to overwhelm ourselves. And every single day as you're taking action on those habits, remind yourself consistently, constantly, almost forcefully that this pain is psychologically induced. It is not the result of a structural abnormality in your physical body. The vast majority of chronic pain is brought on by subconsciously induced physical tension. And you can release from this tension by reminding yourself that you are the one bringing it on. The pain is there essentially to distract you from unresolved emotional trauma, and you can relieve the pain by relieving the trauma. But you have to take the time, you have to be consistent, and you have to be firm with that reminder that this is a psychologically induced state. So crazy stuff, my friends, completely transformed my life. For those of you that have stuck around to the end of this video, you're either wondering if I'm completely insane or if you've just struck gold, and I promise you it is that latter. Go ahead and practice this stuff. If you want some deeper help with this stuff, there is a link below this video that you can click to sign up for a free coaching call with me. Whether it's shredding fat, building your six-pack, and transforming your physical confidence, or it's releasing from your chronic pain and your emotional trauma for good, first session is always free, and we're going to be 100% present with each other as we build your goals, talk about what your challenges are, and then bridge that gap together. So my friends, thanks for checking out the video. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, hit that little notification bell so you know when my videos come out. Drop a comment, let me know if you have any questions, and I will get back to you. And without further ado, much love, namaste, and I will talk to you later.